Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. Incredible guests the world over with amazing insights. They've often been through their own personal journey of some sort, and they're helping others today or exploring the universe and sharing what they're finding. Today, coming to us from Southern California, absolutely a phenomenal fellow, Earl Grey Anderson. He's got a bunch of different roles. He's a musician. He's the state director of the Southern California chapter of MUFON. Um, and again, a bunch of other titles. He's been in different TV shows, a movie, and so on. We'll let him explain that. But he's absolutely plugged in and been paying attention to the universe for at least a decade or more. I'm just excited to have him on the show. Once we get him talking, this is going to be incredible. Earl, great to meet you. We've been having fun off camera for a while. I am excited to have you here. Thank you for being so patient with me.
Thank you, Michael. I'm in a wonderful mood, actually. It was very moving experience. That was meaningful. Thank you.
No,
I
you're
needed
very
that.
you're very welcome. Tell us how this all began. I mean, you can go back to childhood. You had mentioned a really
Hmm.
cool experience as a child. You can
I
start
have to.
where, yeah, we'll get to it. Okay, where do you want to begin?
Well, I'll tell you. Let's go back to my earliest memories. I mean, I have memories of reaching up at the little bird mobile hanging over my crib, for goodness sakes. And when I mentioned that to my parents, I was maybe 8 years old or something. It's like, how would you possibly remember that? But I guess I do. I guess I'm born with that little, gift, which is good. My earliest memories are in living in Venice, California, back in the very early 1960s. For some reason, my safe place was always outer space. um, you know, I would get like the Time Life books that we had, or The World We Live In was one of my favorites, right? It was another Time Life book. But I would make my little fort around myself, my little safe place to play cars or whatever. It was before they had, Hot Wheel cars. But anyway, but I would always have pictures of Jupiter and Saturn and galaxies, and I would like draw a control panel, from a rocket ship on a piece of paper and tape that to my bedroom wall. And I would like put controls, push in the controls. Where did I, where did that come from? But anyway, I'll give you a little bit of my background. Now, my mother, this was no uh, news. She bragged about it quite a bit. Before I was born back in the 1950s, she was working as one of Howard Hughes's private secretaries. Her best friend was, we called her Aunt Ellen. Maybe she was a Nordic. I don't know. She had blonde hair, never seemed to age, and drive a yellow Mustang. The cool person. But she worked for the Rand Corporation, and they became a subsidiary of Hughes and then became their own entity. But my mom worked for Hughes Aircraft. Her office was right next to Howard Hughes's office. This was back in the 50s, so he was already a germaphobe. He didn't care for people that much. A misanthrope, I guess, is the word. So, but he would talk to my mom over an intercom system, sort of like Charlie's Angels. Uh, she told a story, sort of to everybody, that she only saw him in person once, and she wasn't supposed to. What they would do is they would give the all clear, and that's when they could leave the office. They had one parking garage where everybody would park. So Howard would leave, and then they would all clear you, and then the employees could leave after he did. But you're supposed to wait to get the all clear. Apparently, they gave the all clear too early, and so my mom opens up this door to this long hallway, and there is Hughes standing at the end of the hallway. She said he looked very Chaplin-esque. He had like a black hat on, uh, a briefcase in one hand, and he was using a cane, and he just stood there like, oh my God, he's in the presence of another human, God forbid. He shook his head, never turned around to see who it was. He just shook his head, opened the door, and walked out. My mom just stood there, kind of horrified. Uh, Never heard anything more about it. But that was the one time she saw him in person, even though she worked right next to his office and spoke with him every day. Now he would have my mom take, she was very, very good at taking shorthand notes. And she had to have high security clearances because she would be in these high powered meetings with, you know, generals and, you know, military industrial complex, more or less. Hughes was one of the very early private groups. You know, David Grush spoke about, you know, the gatekeepers of all of the you know, the ET stuff. And it was my mom's old clients. When my mom went back to work in the 1970s, she worked as a corporate headhunter for all Lockheed, Rockwell, Northrop, Raytheon, and all those groups. So, but where she got her start was in the 1950s with Hughes. Um, Now, one of my early memories, and I think that this may have gotten my mom to tell me more than she was supposed to tell me, was I had another little ritual. I was about 3 years old, 4 years old when I was doing this. That we had this wooden swing set my dad had built. He was very good with carpentry. So it had monkey bars and a couple of swings and the little, you know, the little horse swing that you need two people on. I would climb up the monkey bars and I would wave and sing at the sky. And I would do that every single day. And I remember my mom, and I'll show you a picture of my mom so you have a little visual. This is my mom right back in the around the early 1950s. She probably looked quite a bit like this when she started working for Hughes. Well, she opened up the kitchen window. The kitchen will play later on into my story. A lot of stuff happened in that kitchen. Very bright, yellow, cheery little kitchenette kind of kitchen in our house in Venice. She opened up the window and she said, "Earl, who are you waving and singing to? You go out there and you're waving and singing to somebody every single day." And I told her without any question, I told her, "I'm waving and singing to the space people, Mom. I'm waving and singing to the space people," which is kind of funny here, you know, 60 some years later. And I technically am still doing that, um, in my UFO work. But anyway, I think that maybe that is what caused my mom to do something she was not supposed to do. It was 1963. I was 5 years old. I'd just begun going to kindergarten. I was sitting across from my cornflakes, and my mom sat down across from me. And she started talking to me like I was another adult, like I was another grown up. So it really caught my attention. She wasn't using baby talk. And she said, "Son, you know, you're always waving and singing to the space people. I want to tell you something about my job with Hughes that nobody knows." She said, "Nobody knows about this, but they sent me out to the middle of nowhere with a little security detail, and it was the Great American Desert." She didn't tell me which one. I have guesses, but she said the Great American Desert. She said that it was me and a couple of security guys, and there was nothing there except for this concrete shack. And I wondered why they took me to see tools or a tractor. I mean, what could possibly be in this bunker thing? But they opened it all up, and she said that it had an elevator at the far end once you walked in the door. That was the only thing in there, was an elevator. And it was obviously not going up. There was no upstairs. So she knew she was going to something that was underground, but she didn't know how far underground it was. They got into this elevator, and she said that it started off like a regular elevator, and then it started moving at quite a clip. She said she felt butterflies in her stomach, was the way she described it. It actually gave her vertigo, I guess. And she said she felt scared. I mean, they gave her no preamble of what to expect or what they were going to show her. Well, she said the doors opened up and there was a little city, and she said it was a mile under the desert. She said that they would get around in golf carts, and that a lot of the German rocket scientists that we acquired at the end of World War II were working there. My mom, she mentioned whenever Werner von Braun would show up on The Wonderful World of Disney, she would point and she would say, oh, that's my friend Werner. He's a charming man. Yeah, he used to call me Betty Grace. That was my mom's first and middle name. It was like a pet name, apparently, that he had for her. And but anyway, she told me that in this underground facility where all these scientists were working on these top secret projects, she said they had little cafes down there. They tried to make people feel at home. So the commissaries would be done, like she said that one had little yellow umbrellas over the tables. And she laughed about it. She said, you don't need an umbrella in a cave, but there they were. Apparently movie theater. And she said that they had a barber shop, but the barber knew how to do my hair for me. So she wasn't going down there for one little trip. Later on, I got older and I thought about it. It's like, well, you don't go to the middle of nowhere for one day or something and have your hair done. So she spent some time down there. Anyway, she talked about this and how they get around in golf carts in this little city. And then she said, son, I want you to know, you wave and sing to the space people. There really are space people. We know this. You're going to hear about UFOs. You're going to hear about, life in the universe. And it's a very real thing. And I want you to know about that. And then, she got my lunch for me. She said, well, it's time for you to go to, kindergarten. And, I went to kindergarten. I, played with my friends, sandbox there. Some of those friends are still, I know the gal that lived next door that I went to school with. I'm still friends with her. She remembers my mom talking about Hughes and all that. And my mom even got Hughes wanted he wanted the See's candy fudge recipe. And he told my mom, he said, price is no object. I'll pay whatever they want for it. We need the recipe so I can have my own people, make it for me. And I can trust that it's not been infected or something. So my mom, I don't know how much they paid, but she said it was a pretty penny. And she scribbled down a copy of it for herself. And that recipe made the rounds back in the early 1960s. I know people all the way in the Midwest that have that See's candy recipe, and I know the origin of it. I know where it came from. So that was my mom's life. And, little things along after this happened, it would remind me of our conversation, especially when she would talk about Werner von Braun. And, he was on Disney a lot because we were getting ready to go to the moon and all that. Now in fourth grade, we had moved 1,000. Oh, have another. Well, okay. I can go back and tell you some of my angel intercessions. I don't know what kind of a time.
Oh, you've got as much time as you
need. Okay. I'm going to go straight to fourth grade for you then, and then we can go back. In fourth grade, and before this happened, I'd heard my mom talking to my aunt about the Betty and Barney Hill case. I'll bring that up. My aunt brought over the Look magazine, which was the sort of knockoff of Life magazine, but it was the first large periodical that had Betty and Barney Hill's story in it. And we could hear my mom and my cousins and I heard her arguing with her sister about this article. So we get up and we're listening at the door, being quiet, because she probably wouldn't keep talking about the story. It was kind of scary. And my aunt was just doubling down. I guess my aunt knew about my mom's work. Not many people did. She wasn't supposed to talk about it. But my mom told my Aunt Mary that I believe that this story is probably true. From what I know, we are being visited by different races, and this very well could have happened. And my aunt was like, well, it's like bad science fiction. And, they stuck a needle into her navel. And I had to ask my older cousin, what's a navel? It's belly button. Shh, shh. So this was maybe, I think that this brought everything back to the forefront for me. uh, I really kind of latched on to what my mom told me back in 1963 at that point. Now, we had show and tell on Fridays in fourth grade. And I went up and I talked about my father's landscape contractor business. And the kids were bored and they were yawning and stuff. I was going to go back to my desk, and then something possessed me. I told them what my mom had told me at the table in the kitchen all those years before. The kids listened intently, and they would do like my favorite Martian antennae behind my head. They started teasing me and stuff, Spacey Earl and Spaceman Earl and all that stuff. Earl was a funny name to begin with. It's my grandfather I was named after. So my teacher scheduled a parent teacher conference with my mother. And I didn't know what it was about. They have parent teacher conferences all the time. So I'm playing in the school, playground, probably waving and seeing the space people, from the monkey bars. And my mom comes out of that meeting with my teacher, and she's very quiet. She walks us over to our old Pontiac blue station wagon, opens up the door, and she said, "Son, I'm not mad at you. I want you to know that you didn't lie to your class or your teacher. And I'm not mad about it." And she closed the door, and I'm like, oh, this is the first indication I didn't know I had done anything wrong. She didn't say that people didn't know about this stuff, She just told me, as far as I knew, other kids, their parents worked in deep underground military bases as well. So she got into the driver's side. She starts the car up, and she continues. She says, "Son, I had to tell your teacher that you have a really good imagination. And but I'm really sorry about that. And then she says, "How did you remember all that?" "You were just a baby." I said, "Well, I wasn't a baby. I was 5." But she was really upset. She said, "Son, people don't know about little cities under the desert. And they certainly don't know about UFOs and space people. And you can't ever tell that to people ever again." She said, "I signed stuff. I could get into horrible trouble." And then she doubles down. She looks at me, and she very seriously, she said, "I could go to prison if you ever talk about that again." So I didn't talk about it. I would ask her questions over the years. Pardon me, they're doing construction work.
No worries about that. That'll go away.
Okay. But anyhow, so let me go back a little bit. There's certain, not just the weird obsession that I always seem to have about the space people, or how I knew that, that's why my mom told me, was because somehow or another I knew. And I should mention, my mom was pregnant with me when she was working in that underground base. She told me that later on. She said, "Well, Earl, I worked right up until you were born. So you were down there too." She said that when I was 21 years old. I was bugging her. "What were you doing down there? Give me a little bit more." She wasn't going to say anything, and then she told me that with kind of a, wicked grin and a Spock raised eyebrow, and then she walked away. So I don't know, maybe something happened to me because I was in close proximity to that stuff. But a couple of very interesting things through my life. I feel like I've been protected. And right now in MUFON, when I came to MUFON, I had kind of a nuts and bolts idea of the phenomenon. And there is, it's a physical phenomenon. It's not like ghosts. You can't get a radar hit off of a spirit, so there is a physical element to this phenomenon. Uh, I like to get that out first, but there's also an esoteric, of course, element to this phenomenon as well. When I was 3 years old, going way back, we were in a car accident. My dad at that time was he was doing a demonstration of a heart lung machine for my uncle, who is a cardiologist. He actually was Walt Disney's cardiologist. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Um, but that's who he was, and he and another gentleman, Dr. K, another cardiologist, invented the first heart lung machine that made it possible to do a heart transplant or open heart surgery. That was my uncle Robert Anderson, who's the chancellor of Arizona State College, the medical school. He was the chancellor there. So my dad was doing demos of this equipment. We were in Utah at the time, and my mom was driving. He brought my mom, and I made it like a cross country trip and brought us along. So my mom, apparently this bus had gone and through a giant cloud of dust, and you couldn't see. My mom couldn't see the road, and so she decided to go onto the shoulder and let this bus pass. Problem is, there wasn't a shoulder. There was like a 40-foot steep embankment. So we went off this embankment, and I remember it's one of my first memories. If not, my other memories are just flashes of things, but I remember the whole thing. My dad is shouting, Jesus is going to help us. He's going to save us. We'll be okay. And we're flying in the air, we're weightless. I remember looking out the window, the passenger window, and the door was locked. The window was rolled up. And I remember seeing the bluest sky and these white fluffy clouds. And somehow or another, it felt like I was drawn towards those clouds. And my next memory is I'm lying down in this field looking at our car, which is upside down, and the wheels were spinning. And my dad's running over to me. He thought I was dead because I was lying there with my eyes just wide open, but I was staring at the wheels spinning around. And he's crying and holding me and thanking God that I'm okay. It's where I'd been sitting in the car. The heart lung machine crashed into that spot. That's where they found the heart lung machine. If I had been sitting where I had been sitting, it was all steel and sharp corners. They used to make this in this lab and, Los Angeles that my dad kind of ran for my uncle. So somehow or another, I got out of a locked door, a rolled up window, and I wound up. My dad said that there was a big boulder maybe a foot away from my head, but you were perfectly fine. You didn't have a scratch on you, Earl. My dad had a scratch. My mom broke her back. It was operable. She was okay afterwards, but she had like a short, a hospital stay there. But this is the first time in my life where I feel like I was saved miraculously. I blame my angels for it. The same, I was talking with you earlier where, when I decided to become a ufologist 10 years ago, it was like a little crowd was applauding the decision. It was the middle of the night. And I couldn't see anybody. It was the strangest feeling, but I knew who it was. It was like, God, I've got a little a cheering section here. I'm glad you guys are happy. But anyway, there are many incidents in my life. Another time, Catalina Island, we were going through the trails. I ran ahead of trying to get ahead of the adults. And somehow or another, my feet stopped. I was running full bore to go into the weeds to get around them and go back on the trail. Again, another precipice. I'm standing there and I'm looking down, and I was 10 years old. This was the same year that I gave my little lecture to my class. I'm standing there and you can see a little sailboat like 200-300 feet down. in the water, and it was just a sheer cliff that went down. So somebody stopped my feet. I was running, and I wasn't going to stop. I was I was trying to beat the adults ahead on the trail. Um, I've been saved since then in a car accident where I probably should have been killed and wasn't back in 1989. Um, but anyway, those are my guys. They've always been here. Um, Now, when my mom passed away, she passed away in 1999. That's when I knew I wasn't going to get the golden ticket for my mom. No, I think that because I kept asking her, I wanted to know what they knew, and what she told me. Oh, Star Wars. I took her to see Star Wars. I didn't expect anything from it. It was 1977, so I was 19 years old. Yeah, or no, 17. Have to do some quick math. Born 58, 1970. So I was like 17, I think, around there. We went to see Star Wars after my mom had had a clean health visit with an oncologist. I could have mentioned that. My mom kept getting unrelated cancers. And I think that probably they were running the city off of a nuclear pile, my guess is, and they didn't know how to protect them properly from it. But anyhow, we were in Santa Monica. This is where I was born. It was where my mom's doctors were, and she'd gotten a clean bill of health. I was there to support her that day, and I said, "Let's go see this movie. Star Wars looks good." So when the film ended and the curtains closed, my mom starts talking. And for years, I tried to get her to talk and tell me more about what she did, and she wouldn't. But she started talking. She said, "Son, you have no idea how close to the truth that movie is. The different beings, the different spaceships, all that. She said, Star Wars is not far-fetched. It's really like that out there. But they're never going to tell the public." She said, "They'll never tell them." And I asked her, I said, "Why not? That's one of those questions. Are we, is there a God? What happens when I die? And are we alone in the universe?" And you have to remember, she was working for the military industrial complex. I will say to this day, I think they're the worst gatekeepers we could have for this information, because it's all a threat to them or something that they can learn and use, weaponize. So I think my mom was parroting what they told her. She brought up the Orson Welles radio War of the Worlds, and how people reacted to that they barricaded themselves, thinking it was really happening, and drained their bank accounts. She said that it could harm world religions, it could destroy the financial system that we have. There's so many things that it could affect, and they're just not going to tell the public ever, son. But just know it's realer than you will ever know. And that bothered me, actually. It's realer than you will ever know. It's like, well, I want to know. I have a need to know. Curiosity isn't a need to know. I know Barry Goldwater asked a high-powered general, to show him the UFOs, and that's what he was told. The Wright-Patterson base's blue room, they called it back in those days. He said, "Curiosity is not a need to know. Never ask me that again. I'll have you court-martialed." So, this is the way that the military and how they look at it to this day. As you've seen, disclosure keeps almost happening. And now, if we're going by our heart, if we're going by what we know, I mean, we're doing disclosure right now.
Yes.
Right. That's I always say this, that we are disclosure. I don't even care if I don't want the government to go and tell everybody. I think we can do a better job of it ourselves. It's going to be a fear factor thing if they do it, because they see something that's more powerful than they are, and they can't fight it. And I don't think they understand it. But they want to misuse this technology, I don't know how much. I don't think they're having a whole lot of luck. I think they've maybe figured out some of this stuff, but my mom, she to the day she passed away. She passed away in 1999. It was her fifth bout with cancer. Um, and she was tired. She didn't want to go through chemo again. That was her decision. It's just like, no, I'm done. Um, but she, we talked more about this when she was on her deathbed. She said she was proud of what she did, that she did what she did for her country like a soldier would. She knew there were risks because, I felt like they had, exposed her to radiation, that, maybe you should lawyer up and go public and go after these guys. And she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. And I understand. I think, you know, she, she's a patriotic woman and a good woman. And also, I mean, she went back into, working, but privately, not for Hughes or anybody like that, but as a private headhunter for all these military industrialist groups. So I think that my mom's work opened that door for her. When she passed away, there was no chance that I would get like the full story. And that's what led me to join MUFON. I was reading the literature, and there were good books, but this one would contradict that one and would contradict this one. And I realized I've got to put my own hand to the plow here. And that's how I, got my job. I started as a lowly field investigator, but I was good at it. And my state director at that time, he was like pouring the cases on me, and I wanted them. I told him, you can keep giving them to me. I'll do 10 at a time. And sometimes I did 10 cases at a time. And I'm like on my 1040th case or something like that now. So I figured, it's like my heroes are J. Allen Hynek, right? Dr. Hynek from Blue Book. Interestingly enough, his two sons, Paul and Joel Hynek, are two of my dearest friends. Kathleen Martin is my mentor. And I could talk about that. I had a face-to-face experience with the Greys that confused me. That happened 9 years ago. And my state director was very nuts and bolts. I drove 4 hours to tell him I wouldn't talk about it on the phone. It was myself, my wife. We both had this experience 3 nights during a week, incursions into our room. And the third night, it was on the Friday, it was like God's own spotlight shining on our backyard. And we got a telepathic message. We're looking at this, my wife and I. And my wife was not thrilled about this happening. It was this abstract, Earl's got his UFO gig, cool. And suddenly, it becomes this personal thing. They're coming into the bedroom and taking blood and stuff like that. But we're standing there at the window the third night looking at God's own spotlight shining down on our backyard. And we both heard in our heads at the same time, don't worry, it's just the neighbor's porch light. And we both got the telepathic message at the same time. And we both just laughed and laughed. And we said at the same time, that is no porch light. And I like to tell people, if you poke at the phenomenon, don't be surprised if it pokes back. It's interactive. We think that we're investigating it, but guess what? You just open the door to it coming into your life and manifesting. And I love it. I was scared and confused when that first happened. I wanted to meet our, Pleiadian friends or somebody like that, and the little gray guys, they're all business. They paralyzed me. They came through a portal in the room and did their number. It was sure a wake-up call. I was very naive about the phenomenon. I thought that I was like looking at it like a scientist would in a microscope, and it's on, safely contained on the slide. And no, you're on the slide too. When you open up and you start investigating this phenomenon, it investigates you, and you become part of it. And that's what I experienced. That's what my wife and I experienced. No, I met with Kathleen Martin, who's Betty and Barney Hill's niece, and she works with experiencers. Such a wonderful, compassionate, and a lovely woman. I was confused still. I didn't know that the phenomena was going to reach out to me the way it did. And we spoke for about an hour, and I felt this great catharsis. She didn't question me. She knew, what I was telling her. She was familiar with, and of course, she went through her aunt and uncle's abduction experience. And I don't think of it as abduction anymore. I don't think that's a good word. I think that we probably came to an agreement before we were even born to be part of this. So, and people eventually find that out, but it shocks people. Some people never get over that speed bump of ontological shock that hits you. And that's where you find people that are afraid that it's like this invasion, or, you've seen it. They're here among us. And, I've only seen good things. I've seen people healed by their, entities. I mean, I have one case where this little girl had a terminal lung disease, and she and her brother and her mother, they were living by a national forest. The father was a ranger in this forest, and they saw a craft land. It left like a patch of yellow grass under it that was there for months and months afterwards. And there were these orbs of light that were playing in their backyard. Their backyard was a forest. Okay. It's very fairy tale like. So the first night, the brother and the sister, they're looking at these orbs of light. Mother is freaking out. All she can think of is, oh my God, there's a space alien spaceship in the front yard. Second night, she and her brother was asleep already. She was alone. She had to crawl out of bed. She was not healthy. Okay, she's a little girl, like 7, 8 years old. She gets to the window, and again, it's these orbs, and they're playing in the backyard. And she's got her face glued to the window, and one comes right up to her, and it's a yellow orb. They always were like a golden color. Well, it got the little "Have a nice day" smiley face on it. And so she's looking at the smiley face, just kind of dumbfounded. And then the smiley face turned into one of our gray friends with the black eyes. Next thing she knows, it's early in the morning. She's been tucked into bed somehow. And she has this like exudate that came out of her nose, like it covered her nose. She couldn't breathe through her nose. It had turned to almost like a scab, and she's calling out for her mother. Mom comes in with hot compresses, gets this thing off her face. And as the mom's doing this, she realizes that her daughter is breathing clearly for the first time in her life. So many years later, this woman came forward. She put a report into MUFON. That report went to the Experiencer Resource Team, of which I'm executive member of. That's, Kathleen became my mentor, and I work with the Experiencer Resource Team. We're the ERT. And this is what we do. We help people get past that speed bump of shock. We have like a provider list of people that can do hypnotic regression for them if they have a burning desire for details. We have support groups. Opus is a good one. Yvonne Smith has a wonderful positive group out here. Ciro. My friend Steve Neal and his wife Mary Cacciapaglia have a wonderful intimate support group in their own house for people that have had experiences with our visitors. And that's kind of what we do. I'll investigate the case. So you've got the case report, but I'm more there like a social worker for these people. And it's important to me because I've been through this myself. I know what it feels like to be confused. A moment of satori seems to come upon people. For myself, my question, I think I relayed this to you. It's like, How come I never met? I wanted to meet the tall, Nordic guys. I feel like they're maybe my cheering section, but yet I've never seen them with my own eyes. I just saw the little gray guys. Had a close encounter with a UFO about 4 years ago, 35 feet away from it, daytime, on my way to work. I was still working as a nurse back then. So the phenomena has been very active, but that was the only face-to-face encounter I had with the little guys. And it scared me. They were not talkative. I got the message on the third night, and it was a cosmic joke, and I appreciated it. It made me laugh, made Lisa, my wife, laugh as well. Um, but that's anyway. It's just I see it now that I needed to be woken up. It's like if you become a Shaolin monk, uh, the Shaolin priest will sometimes he'll come into the new acolyte. He'll have him get down on his knees and blindfold the guy, and he'll hit him with in between the shoulder blades with the blunt end of a wooden sword, and it's like a ceremonial death to your old life and a passage into your new life as a Zen priest. And I sort of see it as that now, that it was almost like an initiation, that I needed to feel the fear at first, that I needed to get past that and understand that there actually is a benevolence there. And that's what I found. So for better, for worse, or otherwise, that's my story.
Earl, this is incredible. Like, I'm excited to have you back on. It'll be whenever you'd like, because I got an instant. The day you tape it is the day it airs, but we'll have you also on at the end of 2025 if you'd like to come back.
I would love to.
I'm going to buy you time here because this is that classic moment in the show where I light sage, and it doesn't matter if it's 2030, you're in New Zealand, Tokyo, Berlin. You can catch the scent of sage. Just give yourself a break though and breathe.
Yes.
We did this before the show, so we know it works. I got a Crate and Barrel tea light in there and a little bit of Juniper Ridge sage. You can find it on my website. I'm not sponsored or getting any compensation if you buy it, but I think they're in the Whole Foods all around the country. Very consistent sage. Give yourself permission to catch it. And if you actually breathe through the mouth, folks, shoulders up and down a little bit, red-tailed hawk feather. Are you catching a little in California, Earl?
Yes, I am.
Yay. And
I'm not blaming it on my own sage here. I can smell the burnt sage. So,
and if anybody wants flowers, just ask for flowers. And if anybody wants to go cray wild, close your eyes and get a little bit of light on ask the universe. It's big, it's loving. Angels, ask angels to bring you a little bit of light on your eyelids. And if you really want to go crazy, ask for a bubble of just compassionate. You've had a long week, a long month. This is going on, that's going on. Ask for the details to be lifted off of you so you can breathe easier. Why not? I'm going to snub this out, and then I'm going to ask some quick questions, easy ones, but they're eternal, so they're not that easy. Is love the fabric of the universe, do you think?
Yes.
Okay, but I'm going to do the thinking reaction. Well, how do you know? How do you know?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah. I'm being very facetious because I really believe it is, but
I experience it. I see it from person to person. When people feel fear and anger, it blocks them off from the source. But when people can get past fear, when they can trust the universe, trust themselves to their higher power, I think there's, that we have multiple helpers out there. That we realize that we're all connected, we're all from the same fabric, and that we're one and same with the universe, that the universe is intelligent itself, and that we're all components of that, and the whole of that within each of us.
That's beautiful. And I'm going to mention some of the other guests on the show. We have 200 plus shows taped. We're booked to the end of November of 2025. We've gratefully had a couple talk show hosts or show hosts on the UAP UFO disclosure front. Vinnie Adams, Grant Lavac in Australia. We've had Lily Nova on, Brit Elders, the filmmaker, kind of investigative journalist who did the Billy Myers 45th anniversary edition in Switzerland with the Pleiadians. I mean, this is back when it was 9mm, before computers really existed. They had proof. 9 different ways and direct experiences. Alan Steinfeld's been on the show. Steve Bassett, from some of
Yeah,
your TV movie
good
stuff.
friend of mine.
Yeah,
Dear man.
we even had a senior astronomer from SETI, Seth Shostak, who's
I know Seth. I know Seth.
yeah,
I debated with him
he's
once.
Did a beautiful interview. He shared a
Sweet
lot
guy.
from his perspective exactly, and it was awesome to have him on. And he's very patient with the whole thing. Uh, let's back up though. If anybody wants to be here, is the universe essentially ready to engage you in a waltz, a beautiful waltz, if you're willing to let go of what you know long enough to pay attention?
Yes, that's a question that answers itself. Yes.
Awesome. And then how about this? Permission to put my hand up in Texas. You're in California. Only love and above my highest self, not my bill paying. I got to go back to thinking at 6 p.m. tonight self. Permission to put your hand up as well. And just what do you feel for a connection from Texas to California? Is it sparkle, warmth, vibe?
Warmth.
Yay. I'm going to whoosh you once. Rainbow light from the universe. See if you can feel it up and down your front and back. And here it comes. Catch a little Hawaii in there if you want.
Yeah. My kitty is responding too.
Oh, and you've got a kitty off camera that we've talked about for the last hour plus. And the kitty has spoken up quite a bit before the show started taping. Yeah. I'll put up 1 or 2 figures. Is it okay to do like Joy and Charlotte, or do you want Min and Plato?
I liked Joy and Charlotte. We got along quite well, and I like Plato as well.
Okay, we'll do those 3, and then we'll have you wrap it up big picture, because I want to have you back on to go more interactive back and forth.
Yeah, I didn't even tell you about the angel that I met in Utah. I did meet a motorcycle angel that came out of nowhere, and this 1989.
Do it. You want to save it for the next one, or
we'll save it for the next
one? Okay. Here's Joy. Ask her just one thing we all need to remember. I think we already know it, but we forgot.
Yeah.
And she's an angel for people watching. I put her up on all the shows. Pink ball light. She's fun.
Yeah. A lot of love there.
And does she have a reminder for all of us that you don't mind boomeranging? What did she say to you to say to us?
Love one another as you love yourself.
Yay. Awesome. Charlotte, same thing. She's everybody's favorite school teacher from 3rd grade, 3rd form. If it's easy to put it that way with words.
She said that I think too much. I try to figure it out too much. I just need to let go sometimes. You're right, Charlotte.
And Plato, you can see the old man's face. He's a spirit guide, and he's pure love. He's really crystal clear about your life stages. So anybody who has a private question, just if you don't mind, pause this, get a legal pad and pen, ask him a question, listen. That's it. Ask for a hug. For him, fist pump, tap on the shoulder. The hugs are sweaty. I'm warning you now. What are you getting from Plato?
He liked to think too much too.
So hey, when you can do, Charlotte's the one who said famously, 7% less thinking a day is the gold medal for us all. And I've gotten.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, ask her, and it's I grabbed the calculator 4 times. I've forgotten the answer every time, but it's somewhere between 1 hour and 20 minutes and 2 hours and 10 minutes a day. It just means do your poetry, go for a walk, hug your dog, put your feet up. So
I need to do that more.
Yeah, flip the pancake. Instead of 7% less thinking, it's just 7% more heart. That's it.
Love it. I love it.
Okay. Can we do one last thing? Can we have you get a surprise by looking out at the blue sky to the window? You're not going to say what you see. You're going to just do the blind, ask the universe, ask Charlotte to make it nice. And you can just say, got it, and come back, and then we'll wrap it up. This way we leave the audience wondering. Anybody else can look out to the sky and ask the universe to show up. Why not? And just say, got it when you got it, but enjoy it.
I got it.
I didn't do it. And I know you're wondering at home. It's feeling like his mother's story. She's not telling you anything, but that's okay.
There are clouds that look like hands reaching out.
Yes.
Like a bunch. And they end in fingers. And that, immediately was the first thing I saw. And I have limited view of the sky here. It's in a
What are the
condominium
odds?
complex, but it was right there. It's how cool.
Okay, if you had to leave us, you're an Indian guru now. We just bopped you on the head. Now you're an Indian guru. What's your mantra you want to leave us with? A final, if it had to go on a t-shirt, what's one of the most important things we all should be doing a little bit more of?
Mm. Uh, judge not, judge not. That's so prevalent out there. Everybody's judging each other so dramatically, and there's no need for it. There's no need for it. World isn't going to end tomorrow. We're going to be okay.
I have one more figure for you. Audrey Hepburn, an angel. I'm going to put up a historical photo. And anybody at home can do this. We've done her a lot before on the show, but we know photographs can't move, but that's not true. Everything is broader, bigger than we'll ever allow for. So everyone's absolutely right and correct. So judge away at one level. But the second you realize that's not a lot of fun, go to your heart, let her wink, smile, shoulder waggle, eyebrow goes up, catch uninvented perfume from Paris, flowers if you want, beach smell, and ask her a private question, get an answer, get a hug. But for you, Earl, can you hear one thing from her to us? She's half grace, half sparkle in the moment. And let us know, too, when you got a movement in the photo. And breathe, breathe, breathe at home. Through the mouth drops you into the body, into your field. There you go. And she's just wonderful, sparkly, and high vibe.
Yeah, I got a wink, and I can tell you what she had to say.
What'd she say?
Well, 1963 again. I mean, I was 5 years old. We were in Paris, France, when she was filming the movie Charade. So she was there when we were there. And I got the wink from her, and that she said, that was not a random thing. And so there you go.
Aw. Well, Earl Grey Anderson, you've been wonderful. You definitely shared a very specific vibe with us. I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Awesome. And thank you.
Thank you.